Ms. Dorfman, you had talked about the somewhat fragmented nature, potentially, of some of the small business development services, and a lot of overlapping regulation and opportunities. Makes sense, certainly. Everyone wants to be efficient and pool resources where possible. How do you juxtapose that with a lot of communities, this body, and state legislators wanting to focus on making sure women and minorities get special access, or at least are aware, veterans? How do we juxtapose those two, the efficiency versus making sure different groups really get access?
Well, again, I think it's in the best interest of a woman-owned firm to get the highest quality and consistency of the education and the resources that are out there, and to be able to provide that, you really do need to unify. The e-learning that's come up here, that is paramount. If we can streamline some of the more, I would say, fundamentals that can be done from e-learning, and then have very specific focuses on those areas where it's a little bit more complex and there needs to be some specialized assistance. For instance, women-owned firms typically find it very difficult to get access to capital. Well, so that's one area we're going to have a specialist in there to walk them through that process to make sure that, first of all, there is funding available, but second of all, making sure that their financials are prepared the proper way to get in there, and then have somebody actually at the bank to hold the bank accountable for lending to women as well. And I really believe, again, that we need, as a unified system, to really look at the demographics within the community and see what the needs for the community are. Right now, we're hearing that some communities are faring better than others because there's not that consistency, but if we can come from a macro level and really provide good, consistent, quality interface for the business owners, I think you're going to really, the investment that we're making is going to just grow exponentially.
Along the same lines, both you and Mr. Cartwright, and it was referenced in the speaker's memorandum about performance measures. A lot of times we measure outputs and as opposed to outcomes. And I was fairly involved in that in my home state of Oregon, trying to shift our budgeting to it performance-based rather than just measuring widgets that were produced. So to that extent, one of the basic questions I would always ask, particularly the SBDCs, was how do we know you're doing a better job than a business that does not start up with SBDC assistance? And is there a way we can measure this, among many other measures that might be appropriate? Could you comment on where we are in that development, what the role this body may have in assisting you in developing appropriate actual outcomes?
Sure. One reference that was stated here was we saw 1,000 clients in the last 3 months. We hear that from the SBDCs and our interface, that's part of how they have to measure how many bodies got through their doors. Well, we want to know what percentage was of the growth of revenues for those companies and how many new employees have been hired. That's going to really measure their growth. And again, when you take a look from a macro level, you can really see the communities across the board where there's success versus where there's challenges and where we need to get in and maybe get more assistance to them.
Mr. Cartwright, could you comment on that and how, again, is that rule-driven, or are we the culprits? Who's to be responsible, perhaps, for that interpretation?
Actually, I don't know if there's a culprit or not, but I can tell you, you make a very good point, and I will tell you that the SBDCs actually do measure those kinds of things that are critically important. We conduct, each SBDC conducts their own state economic impact analysis, where we do get down to what was the revenue increase by a business, the number of jobs that they created, or the number of jobs that they retained due to assistance. That's reported by the small business owner. We also have a national impact study that's done by Dr. James Chrisman at the University of Mississippi. That, as an association, we encourage every SBDC state and regional program to participate in. That study compares the Oregon SBDC and its outputs to the average Oregon business. Dr. Chrisman...
Outcomes or outputs, sir?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And that research is done by Dr. Chrisman. So it's not the SBDC that's taking a look at those figures, it's Dr. Chrisman. So that information is readily available.
We had trouble just as a comment, I apologize for going slightly, we had a little trouble getting that information in Oregon, so I'd be interested in that data if that's available.
Okay.